So this is a historic day, never before of so many online journalists and influencers, and that's exactly what you are. You're journalists and you're influencers come together in this building to discuss the future of social media. Each of you is fulfilling a vital role in our nation. You're challenging the media gatekeepers and the corporate censors to bring the facts straight to the American people, and that's what you're doing. You're going right to the people. Possibly we wouldn't be here right now. I asked somebody, what do you think I'd do without social media? Would I be here? Because I said, I think so. But they weren't so sure. I have to say that, you know that. I'm not sure I believe that, but I have to say it. But you communicate directly with our citizens without having to go through the fake news filter. It's very simple. Together you reach more people than any television broadcast network by far, not even close.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. Today, I want to talk about free speech. I am sort of going to go all over the map, but you'll see where I'm going in the end. Now, in Canada, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who claims to be a liberal, feigns his support of it, that is, free speech, even though it's actually in our charter, which is our constitution to Americans. Just think of that for a moment. A liberal who believes in silencing certain views of citizens of the country they represent. They represent us, not just part of the country. Now, I'm not sure about this, but I think they've sworn an oath to protect the Constitution. And if they haven't sworn an oath, they certainly should. But on top of that, you will hear now what Trudeau has done with our media.
There are a lot of things that keep me up at night as a legislator under a Justin Trudeau government. I've shared a lot of things with you, but what the Liberal government has just announced is probably... Look, I don't care how you vote. If you voted Liberal, if you're an NDP member, if you believe in free speech in Canada, what Justin Trudeau just announced in the fall fiscal update has to be a concern to you and has to be opposed. So Justin Trudeau just announced $595 million, so over $500 million, to quote, help Canada's media sector. Now listen to this. What this initiative is going to do is it's going to, quote, help trusted sources in the media based on criteria set by a panel of people selected by Justin Trudeau. What this amounts to is Justin Trudeau buying journalism in Canada. I'm not making this up. If you go onto the Globe and Mail, National Post, Twitter right now, everybody's talking about this. Justin Trudeau is bold-face buying journalism in Canada. So think about this. Like, if you have an opinion that is contrary to the government, how are you going to compete in this environment? Every story that comes out is going to be a grant application. He's going to create a subclass of cocktail room circuits where journalists compete for your tax dollars to propagate the government's message. Now,
so you heard that about controlling our print media. Michelle Rempel is a Conservative MP, and she comes from the western part of Canada, and the Liberals hate the western part of Canada. By choosing who gets grants, that's public money, not their money. Public money doled out by a group of selected people, selected by the Trudeau government. Now I want to play you, it's a party political broadcast, so to speak, from the opposition leader who has something to say about free speech. Here's Andrew Scheer in his own words.
I believe freedom of speech is coming under attack because sometimes it is inconvenient to certain people. Certain people who have a political agenda don't even want there to be a debate about certain things. Sometimes things are said that others disagree with, and sometimes it is maybe offensive or hurts other people's feelings. But that doesn't mean that we can justify that to curtail or limit or infringe upon such a fundamental freedom. Freedom of speech to me is one of the backbone freedoms. Many other freedoms are in danger if freedom of speech doesn't exist. If we don't have the freedom of speech, do we really have freedom of expression? If we don't have freedom of speech, do we really have freedom of religion if we're not able to speak about the things we believe in? So we have to guard that one. Do we have freedom of the press if we don't have freedom of speech? So the government can play a role in protecting that and promoting it. The federal government does fund universities when it comes to research grants. And as the Liberals have done, they've said that they would prioritize funding to universities that achieve certain targets for gender balance. I've said I would use the same principle and prioritize funding for universities that promote and protect free speech, that don't use the excuse of a group of radical protesters to shut down events, who don't threaten and harass teaching assistants who may have had the audacity to play a video with both sides of a debate currently under discussion in our society.
Now, Trudeau is actively working with social media here in Canada to silence those, both at the social media elite and the Liberals in particular in Canada. They don't want to be heard. They want desperately to silence, and make no mistake and be under no illusion, they will silence us. To my friends in America, and I'll come to them in a moment, to my friends in America who feel their freedom is under attack, I and many other Canadians will quite happily swap the US with us. And then you'll understand what control really is. But this is nothing at all compared with the UK. What I do find sad is that when so-called journalists in the US try and comment on what's unfolding in the UK without any understanding of how British law is actually and actively and openly being stamped on by the British authorities themselves. Here's one view. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is a British MP, is a British Member of Parliament, who was commenting, funnily enough, at the time on Brexit, but inadvertently stumbled on the real truth, maybe even without realising he had. It's a very short clip.
That actually the way to achieve prosperity is to have those key things that make a prosperous state. The rights of property, the rule of law, freedom of speech, and democracy. All of these are essential components of success. If you take a single one of them away, you find that the others are not protected. So free speech protects democracy. Democracy protects the rights of property. The rights of property are part of the rule of law. The four always come together.
Now I'm going to play a short clip from the Blaze TV, and you'll hear Eric Bowling speaking first of all, and then he's talking about Katie Hopkins, and then you'll hear the rest of the clip. This is highlighting an actual attack on free speech. Listen to the words of Tommy Robinson.
We're good friends again. Take a look. Watch.
Hi Eric, so just bringing you the latest here from London, where Tommy Robinson has just been sentenced to his prison sentence for the crime of contempt of court. He's essentially been charged with causing anxiety to majority Pakistani Muslim paedophiles as they've been going to court for trial and been found guilty.
If anyone watches the video, then sees what the judges are saying I've done, it's not there, it's not on the video.
No.
They're saying I incited my followers to attack the people. It's not on the video. I didn't do it.
You didn't incite them. They're calling it vigilante.
Well, I didn't ask. I was talking to the media. I was addressing the media. I was asking the media, why do you harass us? Why do you follow us? These men are now convicted of raping children. They're all walking the streets. Why don't you follow them?
Yes.
I was saying to the media, why don't you
why don't you follow the guys raping our children?
They're all on bail. They're working in chicken shops. They're working with children. They still have contact with children. That's what I'd found out. That's why I went up there. Why don't journalists go and take pictures of them? Why do you always harass us? That's all I was asking. It was a rhetorical. And I specifically mentioned the media. I said, you go take pictures and put them online and slander us. And then they've took one line out of that, out of an hour-long discussion, and they've convicted me on.
Was there ever a chance that you were going to get a fair trial?
Well, it's not. A fair trial would be a jury. But the reason why you have a jury is for fair justice. That's the reason. Magna Carta. That's English common law. But this is through the back door. The Attorney General, the government, have managed to get me before appointed judges. This judge was appointed 2 weeks ago. She was appointed 2 weeks ago. Appointed judges in order to convict me, and even my barristers are just like, what? How can they find you guilty on taking a picture of someone walking into court? I'm going to be.
There you heard it. I'm going to play that last bit again.
Even my barristers are just like, what? How can they find you guilty on taking a picture of someone walking into court? I'm going to be.
Now I want to bring this back to the US. First, I'm going to play a short clip from a recent social media summit held at the White House in the last few days. It was covered by the Right Side Broadcast Network. It's a short clip, but I think it highlights what's really going on in social media.
So I just want to introduce, because a person that I've admired for a long time, who's a great lawyer, Harmeet Dillon, and she's one of the leading First Amendment lawyers in our country. And Harmeet, could you come up, just say a few words, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a tremendous honor to be here with a lot of people who I really respect and admire. The corrupt establishment that you talked about and the mainstream media have told a lot of people in this room that the social media censorship and the banning that we're experiencing is all in our heads. They're gaslighting us with this lie. Let me tell you about a couple of people I represent in my law practice and the civil rights work that we do. David Horowitz is a great American who's a supporter of yours and has been in the movement for many decades. Well, Twitter abruptly deplatformed him one day, took him off, said he was banned, and then he complained, and then they let him back on. And then the next day, they did the exact same thing to him. That's not an accident. James Damore is another great American who I represent. Mr. Damore complained internally about Google's discriminatory practices against conservatives and pushed for more balance. Not only was he fired for daring to do that, but then these social media platforms used their platforms to humiliate him publicly, weaponize their platforms, and make sure that he could not get a job in Silicon Valley. That's a disgrace. But it goes beyond that. These social media CEOs have come to Congress, in front of many of these members of Congress here, and they've lied about what they do. They've lied about the data theft. They've lied about the media manipulation. And they can't get away with that. Now, Senator Blackburn knows from what happened to her on Twitter that these companies are trying to stop the ordinary men and women who you represent from hearing their voices. I'm very concerned that they affected the outcome of the 2018 election, and if we let them do what they've been doing, it's going to affect the outcome of the 2020 election as well. So, Mr. President, thank you so much for inviting everybody here to talk about these issues, and we're all behind you joining the fight to make sure that every American's voice is heard. Thank you very much.
I think that kind of says a lot, doesn't it? You don't hear that in the media. Now I'm going to play you a very recent clip from Tucker Carlson, who interviewed PayPal's founder, Peter Thiel. He's talking about the actual potential national security threat to the US of Google. I don't hear anybody mentioning that. Here's the clip.
Peter Thiel co-founded PayPal. He was one of the very first investors in Facebook. If anyone knows a lot about big tech and its power and its potential dangers, it's Peter Thiel. So it means something when he warns that Google, the world's most powerful company, has become a threat to American national security. They may even have committed treason, he says. While speaking at the National Conservatism Conference in Washington yesterday, Thiel warned that Google may have been infiltrated by Chinese intelligence and ought to be subject to immediate investigation by the FBI and the CIA. We're happy to have Peter Thiel join us tonight. Peter, thanks a lot for coming on.
So, thanks for having me.
What did you mean when you said that?
Well, it was just in the form of a set of questions I asked where, artificial intelligence is something people talk about nonstop in Silicon Valley, but they almost never talk about its dual use. If it's real, if this is a real thing, it obviously can also be used by the military. It'll be weaponized in all sorts of ways, and it's an important national security question as to who has it. There's this very peculiar background where Google is working with the Chinese communist government and not with the U.S. military. So the Project Maven decision was a decision not to work with AI with the U.S. military, but they're working with the communist Chinese. And so the question is, from the outside is just what in the world is going on there? And I sort of suggested a few different possibilities, but I think it's been they've described it as a Manhattan Project for AI. And so if you go around broadcasting that you're building the Manhattan Project for AI, I would think this naturally would draw the attention of foreign intelligence agencies. I think the Chinese are competent enough that the Ministry of State Security is likely to have infiltrated Google. And then I think the Google management has sort of a decision of either letting the software go out the front door or figuring it'll get stolen anyway and go out the back door.
When you say you believe that Chinese state security is likely to have infiltrated Google, what does that
mean? Well, if you say you're building a Manhattan Project for AI, don't you think that would attract the interest of foreign intelligence agencies?
Yes.
This is just hidden in plain sight, and then they are. Well, I think there are sort of all these ways that Chinese nationals are engaged in espionage in the U.S. It's I'm not even. It's understandable that China is doing that. They see themselves in a very serious competition with the U.S. But we're not particularly on our guard about it. And if you have sort of a series of super futuristic tech projects that you broadcast the whole world, it's at least a suspicion. And then the weird fact that's indisputable is that Google is working with communist China, but not with the U.S. military on its breakthrough AI technology.
That?
Well, that's the question. I mean, I think one explanation is they figure they have to because if they don't give it to them through the front door, it'll get stolen through the back door. So first answer is they have to, and then I think of course there's probably a broad base of Google employees that are ideologically super left wing, sort of woke, and think that China's better than the U.S. or that the U.S. is worse than China. It's more anti-American than anything.
But this is, by definition, a threat to American national security, as you point out. So if Sundar Pichai was sitting right here, what would you say to him?
Well, I would say answer my three questions. How many foreign intelligence agencies have infiltrated Google? Have the Chinese in particular infiltrated? And why are you working with communist China and not the U.S.? What is the reason you're doing
Why
that?
do you think the questions you raise, and this is not in any way to minimize their importance, are kind of obvious questions? Why hasn't the U.S. government ascertained the answers?
Well, it's possible that there are people in the U.S. government looking into it and they haven't told us. But yeah, I think the FBI and CIA would be the natural places to look into it. The FBI would look at it from the domestic side. The CIA would look at it from the outside in, and would try to look at seeing if from the outside there are people controlling people inside Google or.
So as someone this is almost rhetorical, but as someone who's built a lot of companies, as you have. Do you think it would have been possible to incubate and grow a company like Google in China? Or
I don't think. I think the U.S. is still better at innovation and at starting things, but it certainly can be copied and replicated.
Right.
And something like this is true of all the breakthrough technologies we have. Most of them are still originating and developing in the West, but they don't give us much of an advantage if they get transferred, in a matter of a few years, if not a matter of months.
Now, it was also mentioned in an article from Neon Nettle. And here's that piece. PayPal's CEO co-founder Peter Thiel has said that Google could be infested with Beijing's agents and called for the FBI and CIA to keep a close watch on the search giant. According to reports, speaking at a national conservatism conference, a closed-door event focusing on Trump-era nationalism, Thiel launched his attack on the tech company. The billionaire investor reportedly told his audience about 3 questions he would ask Google The first question that Thiel wanted to know was, how many foreign intelligence agencies have infiltrated your Manhattan Project for artificial intelligence? Thiel, who helped finance Facebook in the early stages, is not alone in his views on Google's alleged contribution to Chinese military high-tech. He then pondered if Google's senior management consider itself to have been thoroughly infiltrated by Chinese intelligence. The piece goes on like that, but you'll get the gist. Now, in closing, I wanted to add this. In Canada, our fight is on multiple fronts. One, of course, is freedom of speech, but it's also control of the media itself and the right to say whatever's needed to be said, and that we maintain control over our government and not the other way round. In the UK, I feel it's actually more fundamental. The government and the authorities in the UK are, for the want of a better phrase, out of control. No one either seems to or wants to rein them in. And please don't make the mistake of thinking it's solely the government itself. It's not. It's ingrained in the British structure itself that's unwilling to admit they're wrong, or more likely, and in that case it's more disturbing, knowingly carrying on as though they believe they can operate beyond the law, the very law they wrote. When you have a situation in the UK where judges are being appointed just to try someone to get the result they want, then democracy and the rule of law itself surely is under attack. And isn't that a definition of anarchy? I'll leave you to decide that. Now, as far as the US is concerned, the power wielded by social media platforms, quite frankly, outranks their importance in society as a whole. The whole matter of censorship and perceived censorship in America, the land of the free, the last bastion of free speech, could be solved with a stroke of the pen, so to speak. Strip away their immunity to prosecution for violating the rights of US citizens to their free speech and their right to seek redress in the courts, and all this would disappear overnight. The issue of freedom in America is simple because you have a constitution which you hold above all else. Just implement it. In Canada, I fear our fight is far more fundamental. The lawmakers and political parties here see our constitution as mere words. In Britain, they see the law as purely a vehicle to silence. The end game for both these countries, in both cases, is, in my belief, unachievable, and will lead inevitably to civil unrest. Unlike America, because all they have to do is follow their highest law. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, and email. We are also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist, and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on the links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio. And please click on the like button. And you can now hear a weekend review of our podcasts on WHBJ DB, News Talk Radio. Join us and many others, and you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.